In this video we're going to talk about chroma keying. It's sometimes referred to as green screening, but in actual fact you can chroma key in virtually any colour you wish. I need to talk a bit about the train shed before we get into this, and there's some important things that you need to be able to do before you can start effectively chroma keying. The first thing is that you must have control of the lighting. It's absolutely imperative that there is no outside interference from the light, sunshine or anything. So the train shed, all the windows are blanked out, and so is the door. It's absolutely pitch black dark with the lights off. The shed is lit by many fluorescent lights, and one thing you need to know about fluorescent lights is that although you might not notice it when you first switch them on, it takes them a little while to warm up before they get to the full brightness, and whilst they're warming up you can get quite a lot of flicker off them. So before I do any filming, I switch the lights on in the train shed for at least an hour before I take the camera into the place. Now the next thing is that what we're going to do is we're going to remove this area of background, the bit that I'm running the mouse around at the moment. And first of all we're going to concentrate on the dark blue line. It's the bit that is between the scenery edge up over. Now for the time being we don't need to worry about this area up here, because this will be treated in a different way to this part here. Chroma keying works by replacing a colour that you pick and making it transparent. So then once it's transparent you can put other images in the transparent area. So I've picked up on the previous footage that we started out with in part 1, and this is in its original form before it was cut up and edited into the film that you saw at the end of the first video. I've started off again with the unedited part because to put the chroma key on the pieces is a little bit time wasting. So if you put the key on the entire thing first and then you cut it up to edit it, it's a much better way of doing it, and you get a consistency so that when you edit the thing together there's no differences in light or texture or anything else. So the first thing we do is to apply the chroma key. Now I'm using a plugin to this software called Chroma Key Pro. And this is a separate product to the Vegas software which I'm doing the editing in. There is a Chroma Keying that's included with Vegas, but it's not anywhere near as good as the plugin Chroma Key Pro, and this is made by another company called New Blue Effects. I'm going to take and apply the key to the clip. Now, one thing that's different about this video to the first one, if you remember in the first video, in order to get rid of the wall and the ceiling, I actually used this method of making a close-up and then editing the close-up shot. So on this one, we're going to keep virtually the whole frame, so that we've got about 50% of the layout and 50% of the background and the sky. We first need to make sure that the horizon's straight, and we did this in the last video, and I'll just make this a little bit bigger to make it easier. And how we do that is we rotate the image and line it up so this line here is straight on the horizon, and you can see now in the finished frame that the thing's actually straight. I'm now going to trim the sides of the frame so they'll fit, and at the same time I'm going to remove my back. I'll just reduce that back down again so that you can see that we've lined up the horizon. Just for the sake of tidiness, I'm going to, well, first of all I'll show you what the film's all about, so that if you haven't seen the first one you'll know what's going to happen. I'll just scrub through. So the DMU enters from behind the bushes and stops in the station. The 08 shunter then moves to the station throat and then forward to pick up the van from the back of the DMU. The shunter then moves back to the station throat and pulls forward into the centre road. The DMU then leaves. So this is the finished product. Is a simple scene, a typical scene, the DMU arriving with a van and the 08 shunter taking the van and the DMU leaving. You might notice that there's no camera movement in this. I always shoot my videos with a fixed camera position So now we're ready to look at the chroma keying. In this effect, how we do this is quite simple. I'm going to select the colour that I want to remove from this scene, and I do that by picking the eyedropper and going to almost the lightest part of the colour that I want to remove. Now if you look here, you'll see that the colour is actually lighter than what it is here, and the reason for that is that this fluorescent light is actually parallel with the final wall, and because it's closer than the next light, this is obviously going to be brighter. And fluorescent lights on their ends have a V-shape light pattern which makes a shadow. So in this particular train shed, all the lights are in a row, so this wall is always slightly darker than the end walls. So I'm going to pick the colour here, and you'll notice that some blacks appeared. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to increase the colour range, and you'll see as I bring the colour range up, almost all the area has turned to black. It's black because it's transparent. And how the video works, if you go to the actual video in the editor reads from the top to the bottom. It ignores the audio track. This is the audio track. So if you make something transparent in the video, it looks through the audio track and sees black because there's nothing there. Now I just want to make a few adjustments on it. I can see that there's some of the bluish showing through on a couple of the items here. So I'm just going to increase the sensitivity a little bit, see if I can get rid of some of that. And also, because these buildings are in the distance, if you look at any scene, you won't see a sharpness around the buildings that are in the distance like you would see if you were close up to them. So I'm going to put a little bit of feather on the edge of the buildings, just a small fraction, which will take away the harshness. I think I'll put a bit more on. And you should see now that there's a softness around the buildings. So I'm just going to add a bit more. And that looks pretty good. So now we've got some of the area above the dark blue line which hasn't keyed. So we deal with that in a slightly different way. I use a thing called the garbage mat. And the garbage mat, you'll see that there's 4 little crosses appeared on the screen. We're going to pop these crosses into the corners and just above where the building line is. And initialize the garbage mat and invert it. So now you can see that the whole background has been removed. There's still some tiny little bits of the blue that you can see. I'll deal with these in a moment. I'm just going to go and pick another video up now from the and bring this video underneath the original video. I'm just going to run through this. I'll let you see what it is. Let me just have a little look through. Okay. So you can see my tablet there. We'll just play this video. I'll turn the sound off it. I'll turn the sound off it so that it's not interfering with the commentary. You can see that this is a simple video of a cloudy day, looking across the paddock and out over onto the Cleveland Hills. You can see the clouds are moving, so it's a true video. Trees are blowing about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this video as the background. I'll just stop it. I'm just going to move it back because I repositioned it. I want it to be stable. And I'm going to cut the beginning off it because we don't need that. So now you can see we have, when we move through it quickly, you can see the movement of the clouds. So I'm now going to go back to our original video and slide this one underneath. And now you can see that the black background's been replaced by the video underneath. We need to do some adjustment on this to get the picture that we want. So I'm now going to adjust the video to give me what I would like. I can move it up and down and side to side. Just going to make it a bit smaller because if you zoom in, you can make the trees bigger, or you can take a different view. So what we'll do for the sake of this exercise is we will move it around so that we can see the trees and the hills. what you have to be careful of here is that you don't want this area to be seen because it's actually too close. What you want to do is to make sure that everything above this line here you can use, but everything below it makes it look as if it's out of perspective. So I'm just going to move it down a little bit so I get it into a position where the trees look close enough to appear to be close to where we are, and the hills to have enough detail on them but to look as if they are far away. I think we can just do it a little bit bigger. I also want the trees to be close enough so that you can actually see them moving. I'll just have a little scrub through and you can now see that the trains are moving and the sky's moving as well. There's a couple of little things that I don't like about this. I'm going to add a little bit of brightness onto the background. Because I want to try and get it somewhere near the tree colour, near these bushes that's along this wall. These are on the layout and this is the real thing. So I'm just going to add some brightness and contrast. Onto the background. I think it just needs a little brightness on it. And that gives it a little bit of a lift. One thing that's not very good here is this bush or these trees which are on the layout, and it won't particularly look right if these trees are blowing about and this bush is static, or these trees are static. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the trees. There's also a little bit of a blue tinge across the top of this wall here, so I'm just going to take that off as well. So we're now back to the original video. I'm going to move the sky out of the way for the moment. It's actually easier to do this when you don't have the sky. So I'm going to add another effect called the garbage mat, if I can find it. Okay. Now the garbage mat is very similar to the garbage mat that I used to get rid of the lights and the wall. And you can see I'm using two crosshairs here to make a line across the top of the wall. And magically, when we put the background there, we can now adjust this so that the bushes have disappeared, and that's a much neater job. So we'll just have a little scrub through again. And that looks absolutely super. So we've got plenty of movement in the sky and plenty of movement in the trees. All that's left to do now is to edit the track. In order to do this, you have to remove the sky. If you edit the track with the sky in place, each time you cut out a section of the top track, you would cut out a section of the sky, and that would mean that the clouds would jump every time you cut a section out. I went through the editing of a video in detail in the first part. I don't see any mileage in making you suffer me watching doing it again. So if you need to see how to edit the video into its final form, then I suggest that you look at part 1 of this video series. In the meantime, I shall edit this and come back to you when I've finished editing to show you how to finish the thing off. I've now edited the video and taken out all the unwanted scenes. Just a couple of things to do to finish the job off now. I'm going to make the background video the same length as the foreground. Split that away and take away the unwanted section. I'm now going to concentrate on the fade in and the fade out. I want to make the background fade in match the foreground, so that when the film opens up, both the foreground and the background fade in at the same time. So that's the fade in. I'll just go and do the fade out. And that's done for the video. I've already faded the sound out here for 5 seconds on the foreground, so we'll do it for the same for the background. It doesn't have to be as accurate as the video one. And we'll do the same, the sound on the background. I find that for my use the sound on the foreground set at -6 decibels is perfectly good. When I'm using cloudy weather and windy skies, it's quite nice to actually have some of the wind noise as well. I'll take the mute off because I had it muted off so I could hear myself talking to you. And on this one I'm going to turn it down quite significantly. One thing that's quite a nice little touch to put on is to allow it so that you can hear the muffled microphone sounds. I'll just play a little bit of it. There's a passing motorbike there. Let's turn it down a little bit further. So now you can hear the wind blowing across the microphone and the sounds of the trees. Just one other thing, that is a question that was asked from the first video. The background video can be anything that you want it to be. On all of my videos I always use a video for the background because I think it gives it good movement. But you can put any background or any video or picture that you want as a background. For example, this is something that I picked up off the internet from a free download site. So you can use a still image where I'm using a video. You can manipulate it in the same way that I did with the video. So we'll just remove that now. Put the video back again. So now we are ready for rendering, which is the process where the computer combines all of the scenes and the effects and the sounds into one MP4 file, which you can then use as you wish. I'll just give this a quick scrub through so that you can see quickly what's involved. Nice cloudy, miserable, dull day. Thank you for watching.